Hello, in this video we're going to talk about the book of Deuteronomy, and this is a little bit of an introduction to the book of Deuteronomy. So the main idea in Deuteronomy is that before God's people enters the promised land, God teaches the second generation his instructions through Moses. So when we get to the book of Deuteronomy, the story of God's people journeying to the promised land is sort of put on hold for a little bit. And instead we get this long reminder of God's love for his people and also how his people can and should love him in return. The whole book, in fact, is set up like a covenant treaty, defining the relationship between God and his people. And so when we read further in the Bible, later biblical books will judge God's people based on their faithfulness to the instructions given in Deuteronomy. As we read the book of Deuteronomy, we see that Moses gives three big speeches. And the speeches more or less focus on what God has done in the past, what God expects of his people in the present, and what God will do in the future, particularly in response to his people's faithfulness or unfaithfulness. The book of Deuteronomy reminds and teaches us that the Lord is the one and only God, and he has created, chosen, and rescued his people. God's people belong to him, and so God calls them to lives of trust and obedience to him. In fact, there's a key passage in chapter 10 of Deuteronomy that says that God gives his people his laws for their good. And what he does through the laws is he teaches them how to honor, how to love, how to serve, how to obey, how to live with him. As we read the book of Deuteronomy and you see all these explanations of what life looks like for God's people in relationship to him, you may come across some passages that are familiar to you. Some famous passages in Deuteronomy are God forbidding idols and images of him. Here we get the Ten Commandments given once again. There's a passage that in Hebrew is called the Shema. It's a famous passage. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your strength. This is the passage that Jesus quotes and calls it the first and greatest commandment. Other famous passages include the list of blessings and curses for obedience and disobedience, the commission of Joshua, who will take over as leader after Moses, and then finally the death of Moses at the end of the book. As we read the book of Deuteronomy, we like to keep Jesus in mind. And reading kind of with Jesus in mind, we're reminded that Jesus perfectly fulfills the law for us. And because of that, Jesus makes our relationship with God secure forever. Jesus fulfills what we need to do, keeps us connected to God. But that also means that there are implications for us. So Jesus, we see, through his death and resurrection, frees us from the judgment that God's people face in failing to keep God's instructions. But that also gives us a call. Jesus also frees us and empowers us then to live for God and follow his will. Jesus frees us from judgment, but Jesus also frees us and enables us to truly live the way God wants, helping us to grow in that more and more. So these are some things that you can keep in mind as you read Deuteronomy, and also some things that you can look for during your reading. And as always, if you have any questions or as you read or anything that you'd like to talk about, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Enjoy the book of Deuteronomy.